Kanye West is dead. His friends say he would never miss spending time with his children on Christmas. But that is exactly what happened. All recent news reports of his alleged whereabouts are fictitious and the photos released of him are CGI. The man is very talkative and likes to be filmed. He likes interactions with fans who ask him questions. That all stopped since the time he was confirmed missing in December. Shadow government has the ability to disappear and murder people. They assassinated Malcolm X and lied for 56 years about the perpetrator. New York City and New York State recently paid a multi-million-dollar settlement for having wrongfully convicted and imprisoned two innocent men for the 1965 assassination of Malcolm X. An undercover policeman wrote a deathbed confession letter saying the FBI and NYPD murdered Malcolm X. The two wrongfully convicted men were framed by FBI informants who claimed to be present during the assassination. It is known that the wicked High Court Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg had been dead for at least 2 years, yet the shadow government waited a long time to announce her death. In the future, the shadow government will get rid of Kanye West in the public memory by either fabricating the circumstances of his future imaginary death, or by falsely accusing him of felonies which require life in prison. For now, they will release fake stories and fake photos about him being with a girlfriend, and will also continue their attacks against him in other stories. Kanye announced his presidential run in November. It is totally uncharacteristic for him to be quiet. His last social media posts were 2 months ago on Parler and Truth Social. Both posts advertised his presidential campaign. His Instagram and TikTok accounts are hijacked. His close friend and business associate Theophilus London went missing in July last year. The lying mainstream media claims he was found wandering on the streets of Los Angeles last month. It also claims his father Larry London said that Theophilus has been through an ordeal and is recovering. I contacted both Theophilus and his father through their listed phone numbers and received no reply. Something fishy is going on. Kanye West was abducted in early December 2022 and his homicidal torture was completed on the 30th of December 2022 at around 11 a.m. A Facebook page titled R.I.P. Kanye West mentions this as the date and time of his death. NFL player Damar Hamlin suddenly collapsed and died on January 2nd during a football game. Numerous NFL players began crying and praying. Adherents to rabbinism were angered by seeing such a public display that hinted at Christianity from the NFL players. They militate against everything that they perceive as even approaching Christianity. They have been releasing CGI photos and videos of Damar Hamlin to hide the fact that he died from a lethal pharmaceutical injection. They recently used a Damar Hamlin impersonator to mock Christianity with a blasphemous jacket at the Super Bowl. The jacket is sold online under a blasphemous title by eBay and Etsy. Within the blasphemous title of the jacket is the name Kanye West. His name was included because the satanic cult of rabbinism wanted to use a subtle clue to expose the fact that they were behind the murder of Kanye West. And the anti-Christian blasphemies of the Damar Hamlin impersonator. Kanye West exposed the overwhelming economic and cultural power of the cult of rabbinism. They control sports, media, and government.
Welcome back. Okay, so we've talked a lot on this program about how the world that we live in today is really just the empire of lies. The self-appointed ruling elites have lied for decades, maybe even centuries, about virtually everything. We've exposed the lies about the medical industrial complex, deadly hospital protocols and treatments, when the truth is these for-profit hospitals and clinics have been killing for cash, murdering for money for decades, using poisonous drugs and damaging serums, venoms, and injections that cause the breakdown of immune systems, kickstart inflammation, lead innocent Americans to an early grave. We aren't conspiracy theorists. No, not at all. And telling big lies isn't new. The Jewish Virtual Library points this out. Quote, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic, and or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. This is why slaveholders refuse to allow their slaves the ability to learn to read or write. The Jewish Virtual Library continues, quote, the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus, in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they're more readily fall victims to the big lie than the small lie. Since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods, it would never come into their heads to fabricate colossal untruths, and they would not believe that others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. Even though the facts, which prove this to be so, may be brought clearly to their minds, they will still doubt and waver and will continue to think that there may be some other explanation. Unquote. Let me ask you, which one of those words that I just read from the Jewish Virtual Library are not true? All of this sounds objectively true. Who among us that's being completely objective and bare naked honest could disagree with any of those words? For the last 2 years, both fake political sides of the aisle have been fighting to own the definition of the term the big lie in an effort to control the narrative and conceal from the public what the big lie actually is. And the big lie is this. We have a corporate government crime syndicate, public and private sectors colluding with one another and the media in an effort to lock the entire population of the planet into virtual, digital, and real-life prisons. What we've just described here is fascism. Everyone knows the stakeholders are desperate to control the narrative and to pursue the agenda to get a lethal shot into every arm of every breathing man, woman, and child if there's no threshold for death. And the agenda must continue by any means necessary, then why is it considered conspiratorial in nature to question the NFL's involvement of a cover-up surrounding the collapse of one of their players live on Monday Night Football in front of a viewing audience of over 10 million? We've covered the bizarre set of circumstances Damar Hamlin's alleged cardiac arrest that caused him to die suddenly on that playing field in Cincinnati. We've asked questions about how an athlete, at the peak of his physical condition, just drops dead mid-game, has to be revived with CPR, an electric shock, rushed to a cardiac ICU, put in a medically induced coma, requires a ventilator, life support, and just days later, he's flying, gallivanting around the country to another facility. Doctors at the original treatment facility conducted that weird press conference where they actually said out loud they didn't know the cause of the sudden heart stoppage, and boom, suddenly that doesn't matter anymore. Hamlin was just all better now. And then supposedly attended a playoff game where he's ushered in by security with a hood up and shades on and an oxygen-inhibiting COVID mask for a man that we're told needs oxygen. I mean, that's just weird. By the way, the man that we're told to believe was Damar Hamlin had no oxygen tank in tow. And despite having violent CPR performed, which we can expect to lead to significant bruising and even broken ribs, he was suddenly throwing his hands in the air and waving them around like he just don't care. He stood, not sat, in a climate-controlled suite, but never took his hood down, never took his mask off, never dropped the ugly rap video shades. He didn't stop in front of a camera to thank the millions of fans for their prayers, or for the nearly $10 million in donations to a charity in his name. Again, it's all just bizarre. But just when you thought it couldn't get any stranger, the NFL releases this highly produced video of Damar Hamlin on Saturday. He wasn't the deeply messed up recovering critical heart patient from just weeks ago. No, and if he were, and if he really wanted to address his fans, why not just do it from his home? Just grab the phone, go live on one of your social media platforms. No, this didn't look like he'd just been revived twice, admitted to a cardiac ICU, and then just discharged. He went to a controlled studio environment. He recorded an address with dozens of cuts in it, shot on a set, and very carefully scripted. Look, we're not making the definitive claim that Hamlin is secretly dead like a lot of people on Twitter are accusing us of saying. But anyone who says this all just seems normal is just not sane. They're not critically thinking. They're not looking objectively at what is right in front of their face. Nothing about this situation, nothing about any of this is normal. And let's not pretend that false flags and deep fakes and computer-generated imagery is a new thing or that it doesn't exist at all. Many of you have seen the CGI deepfake featuring Tom Cruise. This thing looks completely real. You would have no idea, unless you look carefully and unless you know the triggers, that this isn't Tom Cruise. There's another one using the face and voice of Morgan Freeman. A whole lot of people have seen this. And there's a whole lot more of them. Every image that you've ever seen taken in from outer space is a CGI. Why? Why can't I just see a picture from the space station? Why can't I just see a picture from the moon or from a satellite? Our entire world is built on fake images and animation and propaganda and lies. So, of course, there are plenty of rumors being floated around online that Damar Hamlin is dead, or at least permanently incapacitated.
Kanye West predicted his own death with a poem he wrote on March 2022, titled Dead. He said, quote, "No one wanted to tell me I was dead. Only people who loved me visit in their dreams instead. I found out one day at the newsstand in Purgatory there was a front-page article of my murderer's story. I was so surprised at what it said. This info is for the living. And surprise, you're dead." End quote.